Hello, welcome to Zigmatech Learning Hub. I will be your instructor for fine art. You can call it visual art as well, cultural and creative art. Now for this class, we are going to be taking our exercises from the ExamGuide app. Now if you don't have this application installed already in your device, I will advise you download this app in order for you to follow along this class. Now, ExamGuide is a leading educational app that helps students prepare adequately for exams, for various exams such as UTME, post-UTME, WASE, GCE, KCPE, IJMB, JUPEB, Calbepedia, BESE, JSCE, NCEE, NECO, to mention but a few. You can download the app from our website www.examguide.com, or you can download it as well as using your Google Play Store. Please subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell to be updated on new videos as we upload. Now, if you're ready for today's class, okay, let's get started.
Okay. All right. Now today we'll be talking about origin and prehistory of art, and then we've talked about the first part, and this is the second part of this lesson. And I want you to, follow me as we discuss the remaining part of this lesson. Now, if you're ready, now let's go. All right. So the objective, what are you to learn at the end of this topic? Now, number one, you'll be able to state the origin of art, which I have defined that, I've flogged that over and over again. Number two, you explain the stages of artistic development. We've also talked about some of them, and then today we'll be looking at, you state some of the features of this artistic era, and then you learn to explain some of the materials that are used by this early men and this prehistory period, and then finally you'll be able to explain the functions of the prehistory art. All right, so today we'll be looking at Mesolithic. Now I told you that the Paleolithic is also referred to as the Old Stone Age, and it is the first period. Now the Mesolithic is the Middle Stone Age, and it is the second period immediately after the Paleolithic period. So now let's look at and know exactly what happened within this period. Now this is the age that went through great development. The cavemen made weapons from bones, different animals featured in their paintings. Now during this period, the cavemen they made weapons from bones and stones, and including wood. Now within this period, during the Paleolithic period, there were no development. They just live a reckless life. But in the Mesolithic period, they started coming together and they started living in community. Now under this Mesolithic period, we have what we call the Buffalo era. We have what we call the Buffalo era. Now this the Buffalo era, it features buffaloes. Now how do we know they have this period? It's because of the paintings they did on the wall and on the ceiling of the cave. They painted buffalo, so we regard that period as the Buffalo era. Now within this Buffalo era, we also have the cattle period. Now the cattle, they featured cattle in some of their paintings. Some of their paintings, some of their composition, they feature cattle, they painted them, and then they started painting some domestic animals within this period. And after the buffalo, which is, you have some of this beast in the forest, they started featuring, domestic animals and then other animals that we can actually relate with. Now, this happened in the cattle period. Remember, we have the buffalo period, and now we have the cattle period. Same in this still in this Mesolithic period or Mesolithic era. I hope you get that. Okay. Now, after that period, we also have the horse period. The horse period. Now, the chariots of this sub-period and human beings now look like triangles. They started painting features of human beings that now it looks like triangle. For every beginner, if you see little children, they want to draw, they draw their dad and their mom, in triangular forms and all that. That was exactly how these men started drawing, human beings. Now they started drawing chariots, they started drawing horses, they started drawing and other wild animals. Now after this horse period, we now have the horseman sub-period. We have the horsemen sub-period. Remember, I first told you we have the what? The buffalo period. And the buffalo period, we have the cattle period, we have the horse period, and now we have the horsemen sub-period. Now, all these periods are still in the Mesolithic era. They started coming and living together in communities. After that, they started, inventing things. They started making use of domestic animals. They started making use of converting them towards useful things. They started producing chariots and horses in these periods. Now remember, they were working with what? Woods then. There were no metal yet in this period. All right. Now, so also went further after the horsemen period. We now went further to what? To have what? The camel and horse sub period. The camel and what? Horse sub period, which is what? The 5th period in the Mesolithic era. Now, the camel prominently feature in what relation what? To horse. They feature both the camel and the horse side by side. Now, some of these things, they are all what? Painted on the wall of the cave. Now, looking at the image you have there, you see they started coming together. You see they started farming. They started having houses, instead of living under caves. Now they started building houses with woods and what? Pan fronts. That is exactly what the picture here is trying to explain. Now you see them producing boats, producing spear and arrow, living in communities. So that was exactly what happened during the Mesolithic era. Now, if you watch on the picture you have there, you see some of the tools that the Mesolithic period they work with. Now, within this period, the Paleolithic started making use of stones. Now, the Mesolithic started carving out the stones into spears, arrow, and even sharp objects like knives. If you see what you have there, and then they will now, use the head as they will use wood as the head, while use a stone as what? The main tool. Okay, so now let's go over towards the Neolithic period. The Neolithic period. Now, within this Neolithic era, it was like a revolution. Development grew in high extreme, up to the extent that they started producing metals. It was in this period that they first invented metals. Remember, in Paleolithic period, it was Stone Age. Mesolithic period, stone, wood, and horses, domestic animals. They started living together with them. Now, in Neolithic it was like a revolution. Now, this time civilization came into existence. All right. Now let's take a look. Look at this image you're having in front of you. Now, this image is a popular image. As we proceed, I'm going to explain further on how this image became one of will I call it the 7 wonders of the ancient worlds? All right, so that is that. Now, the Neolithic period, it begins from 8,000 BC to 3,000 BC. That was when the Mesolithic period started from 8,000 down to 3,000 BC. Now, this was the involvement of the modern era. Men became farmers and have stable houses and live in common settings or in communal settings. Now, civilization started in this era. Civilization started in this area. Now, in case in your exam they ask you a question, in what era did civilization started from? Now, what should come to mind is Neolithic. Is Neolithic. And then if I should ask you again, in what year did the Neolithic started from? Don't forget, just put this at the back of your mind that it started from the year 8,000 BC to 3,000 BC. Now, in Neolithic era, the first period we have under Neolithic era is known as the Bronze period. It's known as the Bronze period. Now look at how beautiful that image is. To show you that they graduated from the stone to wood. From wood, now they started producing metal. And now the first metal they produced was the bronze. Now the bronze mineral like tin and copper were components of bronze. And they were discovered in this period. And this paved way for casting, modeling amongst other trade. Within this period, that was when they created, casting and modeling and other forms of artifacts and craft during this Mesolithic era. Now, men became even more responsible to their environment, and they became more adaptive towards the changes that happen to their environment. Now, in this period, they started creating clothes. When they're in winter, Then notice that, okay, we have winter, we have summer, and then we have the spring. Right in Nigeria here, we're talking about, we have the dry season and then the raining season. So men, they started understanding their nature. They started responding to what? To their immediate what? Environment in this period. Now, let's look at the general feature of the element artwork. Let's look at the general feature of the element artwork. Now, I'm going to take the 6 of them, the general feature of the element artwork. Number 1, now the figures of human beings were less prominent in their painting. The number 1 feature of the element artwork, the feature of human beings were less prominent. They did not pay too much attention in drawing human beings. They emphasize more in the painting of what? Wild animal. Now, the number 2 feature of what? The element artwork is that they featured wild animal in earlier what? Discovery. Now, in earlier discovery, they painted wild animals such as buffalo, you see the tiger, they feature more of wild animals in the early paintings. Now, the third thing that was featured in their painting is that they featured domestic animal in later discovery. As time goes on, they started featuring what? Domestic animal. And based on what I explained, they started featuring domestic animal in the Mesolithic era, which is what? The second period. That was when they started featuring what? Domestic animal. Now, from where they graduated from the Paleolithic down to the Mesolithic, which started featuring domestic animal, now into what? The Neolithic. Now, from where their images or their drawing became stylized and what? Juxtaposed. Now, what do I mean by juxtaposed or stylized? Now, some of these animals were elongated. You see, let me say, for example, they want to draw a horse. They can actually make the head of the horse very long, and then the leg will be very short. So they started adding stylization or juxtapose to their works. So that is exactly what is actually trying to explain. Now, the number 5 thing that was featured in the element artworks are the featured hunting scene in early what? Painting. Now, some of their paintings are the paintings of what? Hunters, trying to kill some of these wild animals. You see them some of them drawing their spear to shoot. That was exactly what they were just showing, how they hunted some of these things. And always put at the back of your mind that these paintings, this hunting scene or whatsoever they did that time is what? For ritual purposes. It was not just for fun. It was for ritual purposes. Now, some of them are for religious purposes. Praying is a kind of incantation, praying to their gods to help them, hunt successfully. Now, another feature that happened during these element paintings was they started drawing farmers. They started drawing farmers and drawing, hunters that hunted for animals and all that. So farmers were also drawn prominently in later discovery. All right. Now, most primitive works, that is painting and engraving, were magical, like I told you, and not decorative. They did some of these works for magical purposes, like I told you initially. They are not for decoration. Now, the hunting scene looks like what? Ritual approaches. Now, showing the manner they wish to kill this animal, and some of the figures or forms in the composition were believed to have been what? Intentionally what? Hidden. Now, some of the figures or the forms were intentionally hidden because they did this thing not just for decoration, it is for a magical purposes. So they believe, they work based on their subconscious, based on how they feel or think it will work in favor of them. They don't just do these things, unlike what we do now. We do paintings for satisfaction, just for pleasure. But there are some paintings or there are some artworks that are for magical or ritual purposes. Okay. Now let's look at some of the materials and mediums the early men use in their early paintings. Now remember, I told us number 1 material they use is the earthen material, which is, some of us will know about the suit, the black suit. Yes, this element, they use the suit. Somebody will ask me, how do they get soot and charcoal? Since they are element. Now, you see, in those days when there is when there is a thunderstorm, sometimes the thunder strikes on trees and then get the tree on fire. So when this tree caught fire, this element will go after the fire is off. They can just go there, gather the charcoal and the soot, and at the end they use it for what? For painting. They use for painting. Now the first material they use is the soot. The second material is the charcoal. And then the third material is the earthen color from mud, the red mud. Those are powerful colors that we can actually, thank God for civilization anyway, we no longer use those things, but they are strong colors that can last, the test of time. Now, what they use for brushes, they use reed to make what? Their brushes. Animal feathers and all that. That's what they use to make what? To form their brushes. This may be wise. And then they also use fat of animal to serve as what? Dilute, which later led to what? The discovery of what? Linseed oil. Now they use the fat of animal to dilute some of their paints. Like, for example, they get the charcoal. After grinding the charcoal, they get the fat of animals and match it together with the charcoal to dilute it, to make it what? Have this, this malleable effect. So that is exactly what they did. And now, to some of them, if they want to produce the red color, they use what? Animal what? Blood for red. Depending on the kind of color they want to create. If they want to create yellow, they know how they source their yellow. If they want to create green, they get the green from leaves and all that. So those were the materials that the early men used in their painting. So I want to believe you understood everything that we've explained in this section. Now remember, I told you that soot is the first material for painting. The second material is charcoal. The third material is the earthen color from mud. The fourth material I told you is what? Animal fat that serves as what? The linseed oil or dilute. And then the fifth material I told us was what? The feather of what? Or reed, from plants that they use as their brush. And then finally the sixth material they use is what? Red, as in how they get their red is the blood from what? Animal. So these are the 6 materials. There are other ones that might not that are not mentioned here. You can go and do your research and get that, and get some of these other stuff to get the full materials that the early men used in making their painting. All right. So now if you're looking at the screen, you'll see the tools that was used by the Neolithic men. If you watch, they do more with what? Metal, as against the Mesolithic and the Paleolithic. Now they work with what? Metals. This was the origin of what? Iron, bronze, and all that. So it was in this era that they invented all these things that we are enjoying here today. Now, I did a total summary of eventually all the tools that were used. Now, how Stone Age men made hand axe. Now, the process of what? Cutting the stones is exactly the picture, how some of the tools they use look like. You see how creative they are? Okay, so this and even more are what we have for the topic. Now, in summary, so now let's do a quick summary of what we've learned from the part 1 down to part 2. Now, we talked about prehistory art, which I told you it is the period that existed even before the invention of writing. And then we state some features of what? The prehistory art. And then we made mention of what? The 3 major stages of prehistory art. And I told you the first stage is known as what? The Paleolithic stage. And then we talked about the second stage, which is known as the Mesolithic stage. And then we talked about the third stage, which is known as what? The Neolithic stage. Now remember, each of these stages has a second name. The first stage, which is Paleolithic, is also known as the Old Stone Age. The second stage, which is known as the Mesolithic, is also known as what? The Middle Stone Age. And then finally, the Neolithic era, which is known as what? The New Stone Age. Now remember, I told you that Neolithic is the what? Beginning of what? Civilization. In Mesolithic, they started living in communities. They were not civilized. They are still a king. But in Neolithic, civilization what? Came in. Now, we also explained some of the materials and the tools that was used by the prehistory men or the cavemen in producing their art work. So thank you so very much. Now it is time for question and answer. I want to believe that by now you have downloaded the exam guide. Come on now. Yes, I just want to believe that by now you have the exam guide, because I'm going to ask us some questions that might not literally come from this topic. I'll just give you random questions, then let me try how far or how much you know when you talk about what? Art. Without any further ado, now let's answer some of those questions. Now I told you, now explain Mesolithic art. Can you do that? Are you sure? Then give it a try. Get your pen, get your paper, explain Mesolithic art. Now, number 2 question I asked is that we should state 3 materials and tools used for the cavemen. State 3 materials and tools that was used by the cavemen. Yes, I want to believe you get that right. Right? Okay. And then finally, I want you to state the futures of art in the Paleolithic era. State the futures of art in the Paleolithic era. So what are the futures of art in the Paleolithic era? Now let me answer this one. Let me help you, some of you, because, okay, let me just help us. All right. Now some of the futures is that during this Paleolithic era, some of their paintings are of wild animals. Now they painted more of what? Wild animals. And then some of their artworks are mainly done on the cave wall and on the ceiling of what? The cave. So you can go further and break this and explain it, and then, okay, I want to believe we've got that. Now let's dive into our exam guide, and then we'll see what we've got there. All right, we are on the wall of our exam guide. Are you ready? Okay, so now what we did today is cultural and creative art. You click on it. For those of you that is just seeing this video for the first time, now ExamGuide is a platform where it aids you, it serves as a guide to any exams that you want to take, mostly in Nigeria. Is it WEAC? Is it BESE? Is it your NECO? Is it GCE? Is it JAMB? Any of these exams, we got you covered. Just get the exam guide, install it in your device, and then use it. Try your hands there. Use it because we have questions from 2000 down to 2022, as the case may be. So you can just give yourself a trial and help yourself out, to prepare yourself for straight A's. Okay, all right then. So now let's choose the topic we learned today. We did art history. We'll go straight to art history and you check it. Art history. Okay, my art history is already checked. Okay. So we'll check the art history and then we'll say okay. And then we'll go down to the year we have from 2012 down to 2021, but I'll just use the random. So because we want to try ourselves randomly to see how far we've gone. Okay. Now let's see this question. Question number 5. Now, if a terracotta head are dash, abstract, exaggerated, realistic, stylized, or surrealistic. So give it a try. Is this abstract head? Is it exaggerated head? Is it realistic head? Is it stylized head? Is it surrealistic head? Okay. If you say realistic, you are correct. So now let's see what we have in question number. Let's try question 57. Okay. The above bronze head with pointed hairstyle is found in dash. Yes. Look at the image you have on the screen. Now, the above bronze head with pointed hair style is found in which of the local, will I use the word local government or state or original, anywhere or country? Now, we have the Benin, we have the Bronu, we have the Ibadan, we have the Ife, and then we have the Lagos. So, which of the arts do you think has this head? If you say Benin, you're wrong. If you say Ife, you are correct.
Thank you for participating in today's class. You can practice more questions using the exam guide. Now the app scores and give a detailed explanation of all the questions at the end of your practice test. Now you can learn a particular topic of interest with different modes like study mode, mock mode, and practice mode. It also have other features that make learning fun. Now, it is a must-have for all serious students. Download the app from www.examguide.com if you don't have it yet. See you in the next class. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell, and then share this video to anyone you know that would benefit from it. Thank you, and bye-bye.